All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we're jumping into a massive challenge. How do you make the perfect decision when you are absolutely drowning in complexity and a sea of endless choices? Let's get into it. I mean, have you ever faced a decision that was just so huge, with so many different moving parts, that your gut feeling just wasn't going to cut it? How do you actually find that one single best path forward? So, to really get a feel for this, let's take a look at a real world example with the industrial gas giant Praxair, which is now part of Linde. They were staring down a decision making problem that was on an almost impossible scale. I mean, just look at these numbers. This is a logistical nightmare. Just try to imagine for a second that you're the logistics director. Every single day, you're trying to coordinate this entire web of vehicles, drivers, and deliveries. You've got to balance customer inventory levels, your own production schedules, and find the most efficient routes for hundreds of trucks. And this is really where they hit a brick wall. The old way of doing things, relying on experience, maybe some basic spreadsheets, it just couldn't keep up anymore. The problem had simply gotten too big, too complicated to solve by hand. So, how in the world do you find order in that kind of chaos? Well, you have to go beyond just looking at data from the past. You have to step into what some people call the final frontier of data analysis. Let's see what that means. Okay, so analytics really happens in 3 stages, and this is super important. First, you've got descriptive analytics. That just tells you what already happened. Then you have predictive analytics, which tries to forecast what's going to happen. But the real game changer, the final and most powerful step, is prescriptive analytics. It doesn't just give you some insights. It actually gives you a recommended course of action. It literally tells you what you should do. So yeah, this is the crucial leap. It completely transforms your data from just being a report card on the past into this powerful, forward-looking engine that helps you make the absolute best thing happen. So to prescribe a perfect solution, you first need to build a model. And honestly, the best way to think about a model is like a recipe for getting the best possible outcome. And that recipe has 3 key ingredients. First up, you need your ingredients. These are the things you can actually control. In business, we call them decision variables. How much money should be spent on this ad campaign? Which warehouse should fulfill this order? These are the levers that you can actually pull. Next, every great recipe has a goal, right? The perfect dish you're trying to create. In our world, that's called the objective function. It's a clear, measurable goal. It's the why behind your whole decision. Are you trying to make the most profit possible? Or maybe minimize your costs? You have to define exactly what success looks like. And finally, every recipe has rules you just can't break. You can't ignore the oven temperature. You can't just skip a key ingredient. These are your constraints, the real-world limitations you have to work within. Like a budget you absolutely can't go over, or a production number you have to hit no matter what. Okay, so that's the theory. Let's see this recipe in action. How does a company figure out its best production mix to make the most money? So let's meet MBI Corp. They make 2 computer models. Each one has a different profit margin, and each one takes a different amount of labor and materials to build. Their goal, their objective function, is simple: maximize profit. But they have rules to follow, their constraints, a limited number of labor days, and a fixed budget for materials. Plus, they've already promised to make at least a certain number of each computer. So what they do is they lay the whole problem out in a simple spreadsheet, something that looks pretty familiar to most of us, right? You can see their objective right there, that total profit cell they want to make as big as possible. And all the constraints are laid out too. But the big question mark is sitting in those empty yellow cells, the decision variables. What's the secret formula? How many of each should they actually build? And right here, this is where the magic happens. They use a built-in tool called Solver, and the model just works its magic. In a few seconds, bam, it spits out the single best answer right into those cells. It perfectly balances every single trade-off to find the maximum possible profit, which, as you can see up there, is over $5 million. Absolutely incredible. Now, what's really amazing is that this kind of power isn't just for huge multi-million-dollar manufacturing problems. This whole way of thinking, it's called optimization, and it's being used absolutely everywhere. And the difference between the old way and this new way is it's night and day. Instead of a slow, manual process that relies on a gut feeling and is full of errors, optimization gives you a fast, data-driven, and provably optimal solution. It's not just good enough. It's the best possible answer you can get.
And this approach is making a huge difference in the real world. The Canadian Football League, they use it to create their game schedules to maximize TV ratings and revenue. The nonprofit Meals on Wheels uses it to find the most efficient delivery routes, which means they can get more food to people who need it with the exact same resources. And this is just incredible. The Pennsylvania Adoption Exchange uses a model to help better match children with loving families. This is about making systems work better for people.
You know, the best part about all this is that these incredibly powerful tools are more accessible today than they have ever been. They're often built right into the software you're probably already using every single day, like Microsoft Excel. The same basic logic that you use for a simple budget can be scaled up to solve these unbelievably complex problems. So the big takeaway here is that this isn't just a fancy technique for giant corporations. It's a powerful framework for thinking through any complex choice that you face. It forces you to define your goal, to know what levers you can pull, and to respect your limits. And that kind of leads us with one final question to chew on. What's one decision, either in your work or your life, that you wish you could optimize?